This lesson video is going to talk through modular design in Java, at least the introduction to it, okay? So first of all, in Coral, modules were called functions. In Java, they're usually called methods. And so know that my terminology that I use is probably going to be methods most of the time. So when we work with modules and programming, it's when we break that code down into smaller chunks. And so that makes our code reusable. I can take those chunks of code and reuse them in multiple places. It makes it easier to debug, and it allows for us to create what's called highly cohesive mini programs. So modules will do basically one job very well. So when we're designing a program, we're going to have multiple methods or multiple little mini programs in our programs. Coral, we'll call those functions. Java, we'll use the word methods, and modules is basically a generic term that's used for everything. You're going to hear me say methods most of the time. So by the time we get done, we would hope that you have an understanding of these vocabulary terms. So listen for these throughout the video and come back and ask about them if we don't cover them all. Parameters, arguments, return types, method identifiers or the name of the method, definition of the method, a method signature, and cohesiveness versus coupling. So in Coral, when you worked in that environment, we had a method or a function signature, and the signature is the first line of the method. So when we opened up that Coral program, this is what we might have seen as the first line. That function or method signature is very important. It tells us a lot of things about the method. It can tell us the method name, it tells us the parameters that we need, and it tells us whether there's a return value. In Coral, this is what a method signature might have looked like. I want to focus on the Java signatures because that's what you're going to be writing. And so these are all Java method signatures. And remember, the method signature is going to give you the return value or return type. It's going to give you the method name, and it's going to identify the parameters. So this right here is kind of a generic template. This very first line right here is a template that we can follow. What's different in Java is we will always start all of our methods with these two words, public, static. We don't have to understand completely what that means right now, but to help you out, public means that everybody can have access to the method. So it's public versus private are the two most common access specifiers. Static means that the method can stand on its own. That's an oversimplification, but that's what we're going to use for right now. And so just know that you have to use it. So all of your method signatures in Java will be public static. In this first signature, public static void welcome, here's what I know. Void for my return type, that's always going to be the third thing in your method signature, the return type, is telling me that there is no return. And so in this place, void means no return. I also have empty parentheses. So when those parentheses are empty, that means there are no parameters in my method, which also means there's no arguments that I send to the method. The second signature here, public static void message, is going to tell me that I have no return value because it's a void, so it has no return. My method name is message, and I have one parameter. And the data type of that parameter is a string. So I have to send one argument to the method. It gets stored in that parameter and then utilized. Most of this is not going to make sense to you until you watch all the videos in the course. And so just kind of take in what you can here. And then when you go into your course and your Canvas course, then all the pieces of the puzzle will start to click because you're going to see some code examples then. Right now, I'm only wanting you to focus on these method signatures. So this third example is going to show you something new. It has the word double right before rectangle area. That is my return type. And so in this example, it's going to return a double value. And remember, double is like float in Coral. Just doubled is usually what we use in Java. You can use a float if you would like. Rectangle area is the name of my method. And then this particular one needs 2 values. It has 2 parameters. Notice when we create the parameters, it's just like declaring a variable. You need to have the data type that you're using and then the name of the variable. I would prefer that we use width and length here, but they didn't fit on the screen. I like to have more descriptive variables. So when you're writing your programs, try to have your variables a little bit more descriptive. On this screen, we have 6 different method signatures, and I'm going to be asking you some questions about these signatures. And so in my in-person class, we use whiteboards and people respond on the whiteboards. And so what I want you guys to do is grab a sheet of paper, pause the video if you need to, grab a sheet of paper, and then as I go through each question, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to pause, or you can stop the video, and then I'm going to tell you the correct answer. So that's why you might want to pause. And so I'll try to give you a pause so you have enough time to kind of click, or if you just want to listen through, like hear the question, hear the answer, that's what this is going to be. But if you want to kind of check yourself as you're going along, grab a sheet of paper and do that with us. So the first question is, out of these method signatures, and you're going to answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, which of these methods has a no parameters? The correct answer is number 5. Public void instructions is a method with no parameters. There's nothing inside the parentheses here. Next question. Which of these methods has 1 parameter? The correct answer is 2, 3, 4, and 6. Each of those has 1 parameter inside the parentheses. Our next question is going to be, which method has a return value, or methods? It could be multiple. Which method or methods has a return value? The correct answer is 4. All of the other ones are void, but 4 has a return value here. The next question is, what is the name of the method for number 3? What is the method name? The answer is print age. The method name always follows either void or the return type. The next question is, which method has multiple parameters? The correct answer would be 1. It's the only method that has more than 1 parameter, and parameters are separated by a comma. So that gives you a little bit of a feel for kind of how we do stuff in class. And if I had time, I'd make it a little quiz video, but I didn't. So hopefully you kind of got a little bit of something out of that in terms of answering some of those questions as we went through. If I take a look at next slide. When you worked with Coral, you started naming the methods, or they named the methods with capital letters. That actually has a name. It's called Pascal case. We will use the camel case format when we name methods in Java. So I want you to begin your methods with a lowercase letter, and then all the other words are going to be uppercased. There is a reason for that, and when we get into talking about object-oriented design, it will make more sense. But you want to name your methods with a lowercase beginning letter. This is the official slide for the different parts of a Java method. We've already kind of talked to them a little bit. So the modifier gives us public or restricts access. Public and private are the most commonly used. You will always have public because you want to allow access. We will also add the keyword static. That's not on this slide, but we have to add that the way that we write our methods. You have a return type, the method name, the parameter list, and the thing we haven't talked about is the method body. The method body is always going to fall between these two curly braces, and the method body is the code that gets executed if this method is called. Please notice that these variables x and y are used within this method body. Once that method body is done, or once the method is done executing, those values go what we call out of scope. They no longer exist. And that's why we have to declare them here as our parameters. We have to declare the data type and the name of them so that we can use them locally within this method. And then when that method is done executing, they go out of scope. There are examples of all of these in Canvas, so please take a look at all of that material in the videos. And then we're going to just take a look at a workspace in our zybook for a few quick examples. The videos in the course are going to cover more. This is a workspace in Coral that you guys will use. And let me see if I can enlarge the font here so you can see this. Okay. So here we go. Number one, I have several methods stubbed out, meaning I am planning on writing a welcome method. I'm planning on having a message, and I'm planning on doing a rectangle area method. The methods, when I say they're stubbed out, and this is one of the things that's kind of nice about this, is I can lay out the logic of my program and I don't have to have everything working in order to incrementally design my programs. So the first thing we're going to do is the void method, just as a quick example, and we're going to talk about invoking a method. Invoking a method is when we call a method. And so the method is called or invoked with the method name. Because welcome doesn't return a value, I can just call it with welcome, parens, semicolon, and then it's going to go and perform some action here, which I don't have written out, but I'm just going to say this is a welcome message. Now, because my programs are stubbed out, I can execute this program and see if this method works before I complete the other ones. However, whenever I have a method that returns a value, if we take a look at this program, there was an error that was being produced down here. And that error message is no longer showing up, but well, let's try to run it and see what happens. I have a feeling it's going to not run, and I will explain why. This method must return a result of double. So it's telling you, hey, you have a method stub. That method stub is not complete. Rectangle area is supposed to return a value. So when you're creating these method stubs, even though I don't have that method written, I have to say, well, return, I don't know what it's supposed to return, so I'm just going to say 0. It's got to return some value. So I'm just going to put in a return 0. I'm not calling that method yet. I'm not invoking that method, but I have to have the structure of the method at least set up. This also shows you very quickly that you have to use this return keyword when you do returns in Java. Longer video within the lessons. This is just kind of a quick overview for you guys. So now when I run this method or run this program, it's going to produce my welcome message. It says this is a welcome message. So I can incrementally design my program and chunk it into different pieces and then test those pieces as we work our way through. I'm not going to write the second method, but just to kind of show you the rectangle area. Rectangle area is supposed to return a value. And so I need to create a variable locally here. I'm going to call it area, assign it 0 to start with because I don't know what it's supposed to be. But then area will be assigned rectangle area parens, and I'm going to send in 4, 5, so I should get a result of 20. I should always output that result then. So I'm going to output, give it a prompt, rectangle area, space plus area. Now, please note, I didn't fill in this W and this L, but they popped in there automatically. Don't try to type them in because it won't work. But what's happening is if I run this code, it's going to run the code. It's going to go to this method and it's going to return 0 because I didn't write the method yet. but I at least know that the method is being called because I put in that program stub. Now what I can do is say, okay, I want to return width times length. Variables there are not descriptive enough, but we're going to go with it for now. Ignore this message, and I'm going to run the program, and now it should return 20, and my area is 20. If we have the area of a rectangle, did I do integers or doubles? I did doubles, so maybe my width is 45.3456. I don't know. I'm trying to get a weird answer here. So 4.3 on this, and we execute again. We're going to get rectangle area, and I should show you it's actually running. Let's clear the console, and let's run that real quick. And so it's printing my welcome message because I did that first, and then it's printing this rectangle area. But what I want you to show you is, like, we haven't learned how to format nicely those decimal points. There is an optional topic in Module 1 if you want to look at it, but I'm not going to expect you to format this to be nice output yet. It's okay to have long decimals in your outputs. All right, that gives you a very, very brief overview lesson again of what we're working in with this particular module. There are more detailed videos with additional instruction within the Canvas material, so please watch that. I need to do one more thing here, and that's going to go back to our slide deck and hop down to this. When we write methods, we want to have methods that have high cohesion and low coupling. High cohesion is basically the idea that that method does one job really well. Everything within that method is to perform that job. And so it doesn't have any outside influences. It doesn't have any extra stuff. It does one job really well. That's high cohesion. Low coupling. So let's actually look at one of these images here. So this particular image is showing high coupling, which means that we have, and what I want you to notice is just notice all the lines going in and out from each of these. And what that means is that in order to do one process, I have to, maybe call in another process, etc. And so high coupling is when you have the items are so interconnected that you can't accomplish one task without another task. And if you do that again and again, pretty soon you've got like one task that you can't complete because you got 10 other things you got to do. That is high coupling. You want to have low coupling so that when you perform a task, you don't have to go perform like 5 other things before you get that task done. Okay? Think of it this way. I just thought of this in my head. Think of high coupling as if you have some ADHD tendencies and you start one job, but you can't do that because you get distracted by doing this and you get distracted by doing that and blah, blah, blah. So because you got so many things kind of going on, you have a lot of high coupling within your brain, so to speak. And so we want to try to reduce the distractions so that we can get that task finished. And you also want to have you want to have high cohesion, which means one task does one job really well. This image is on low cohesion. And basically, the idea with low cohesion is kind of the same, where low cohesion would be I've got one task that's doing multiple jobs versus one method that's doing one job really well. And so when you are programming, you want to strive for high cohesion and low coupling, streamlines your program and makes things a little bit easier to debug. All right, that is your lecture video for the week, but it is by no means the end of the videos that you should watch. That just gave you a sky-high overview of everything. Please go into the individual lessons and modules and investigate.